Welcome. You found Why We Are Christians. It is a conversational interview program, Why We Are Christians. And there is a dear Christian lady that was a part of our church and has now gone back to where she was born in Togo, West Africa. And her name, well, we call her Sika. Now, Sika, would you give us your whole name? There's 8 names. What is your whole name?
My full name is Edwige Eliane Situ Sika Kafui Ayaovi Amados Joko.
So we know you as Sika Amados. That's how we always called you, Sika Amados. And you were working here in the United States. I think you worked for a credit union, didn't you, Sika?
Yes, I work for a credit union.
And you went to school at San Francisco State University.
Yes.
And you got a marketing degree.
Marketing degree, undergraduate
Now,
degree.
where were you born, Sika?
I was born in Lome, Togo, West Africa.
And that's where you're at right now.
Exactly.
I remember you saying that you needed to go back and be with your family and how much we've missed you. But so you're with your family back there now in Togo.
Yes.
Now, tell
I'm
me a
with
little.
my mom and my aunt and
Yes.
all other people.
I know that your family is very important to you. Now, tell us a little bit about your growing up. What was life like, and what kind of stuff with the religious atmosphere? What kind of religion did you experience when you were growing up?
When I was growing up, I grew up Catholic. My mother was a Catholic, so I went to the whole Catholic. I went to catechism, and I got the communion, and my household was. My mother is a very big believer, so prayers and talking of the Lord and relying on God. So that's how I grew up. But I also grew up where in Africa there's lots of there's the Catholicism and then few Protestant and traditional religion.
Now, the traditional religions, that's what we used to talk about, Sika.
Yes.
And
yes, that was also there. And growing up, I didn't know much on that aspect, but I think I learned more of it when I came to the States. And then coming on vacation and seeing, because a lot of people practice both religion. They believe that traditional religion is their ancestral religion, so they didn't want to let go of it. So even though they go to church, but they still would do sacrifices, and anytime anything difficult happens, they rely on going to a priest, voodoo priest, to call the ancestors and find out why this thing is happening to them.
Yes, we call that Santeria developed from that when the West African people were rounded up and made to be slaves and were transported to the New World, the Caribbean, and the worship of the Orishas spread throughout that. And you were the first person I really had an opportunity to talk to that knew about this from a West African point of view.
Yeah,
it's very valuable
really live.
To me.
It's really live, and sometimes you still see, even to today, it's still a big practice. And it's something that even in national TV, they are called priestess and priests. And in most villages, that's where they go to, witch doctors. They go to them. So there's still a lot of belief in that. In the villages, more in the city, they've westernized it, but it's still very live.
Did you see those native traditional religions as being helpful or harmful?
Well, I think I was fortunate. That's something I always thank my mother, and my mother always thanks her grandmother for because here they call it heritage, and my mom will say she's fortunate that she didn't have that as a heritage, because if it's something your family practice, you will not be forced, but you think that's what you have to practice. So it is very, I've seen it growing up with people, neighbors, and that's what they use. But I think as I know as a child, one thing I remember when I'm the oldest for my mom, there's four of us, and there was three at the time when I was growing up here. She would get us early in the morning because my mother believed that you have to pray before the birds start singing because they're without sin, and when they're singing and praising God, your prayers will not be heard. So 3 in the morning, she'll wake us up and take us into her room, and we'll pray. So every morning she prayed. So that's what I grew up with. And what makes it so when I have challenges and stuff, that's what I know, and that's because that's what I've seen my mother do. Where others, they've seen their parent do sacrifices or go to a voodoo doctor to ask and call the ancestors and find out how they can handle whatever situation they're facing.
Well, thank you, Sika. I know how much that meant to me to talk to you when I was working on my book we call The Soul Journey, how Santeria, shamanism, Santeria, Wicca, and charisma are connected. Yeah, I'm looking at what you emailed me just the other day, and I asked you about your early concepts of God, and you said, my earliest concept was that we needed God in our lives, but I didn't think everyone can have a personal relationship with God. You emailed me that just yesterday. Talk about what your early ideas of God were.
Well, my earliest idea of God is that we were created by God, and there are certain people, depending on how they believe, to rely on God, and God will answer them. And I recall whenever I have any challenge, even when I left and came to the States, because I came to the States at age of 15, I didn't have a personal relationship with God, but I know whenever we were growing up, we have any difficulties, my mom will pray and God will answer. He answered her. So I always say her God. I say, pray to your God, because when you pray, he answers. Until in my later years, my mom wasn't with me, so I had to pray for myself. And then I got answers, so I realized he can answer to me too. And that's when, I say that you can develop a personal relationship, because I grew up relying on that connection that my mother had with her faith, and didn't think that I could also get answered prayers.
So, what did you think about Jesus? What I'm trying to get at is, I know later on you had more of a concept of what Jesus was all about, the good news and so on.
Exactly.
How did that happen? How did you begin to hear about Jesus?
I began to hear about Jesus. My mother talked a lot about God, and I think it's mainly from, but she didn't talk a lot about Mary. She was a Catholic, but she didn't stay Catholic. So we didn't talk a lot about Jesus growing up, but God. And I think in the States, when I learned more in praying and knowing that we were saved, and I think my own experience, I had difficulty when I was reading. I did a Bible school in the States, is learning the Old Testament. And I remember, and I said, I'm very pleased that Jesus came and to save us, because in the Old Testament, the punishment for committing a sin is death, and so I understood it at that time that He came and saved us, and because He shed His blood for us, and that's what helped allow us to get to reconnect us to the Father. So I learned and appreciate Jesus, and then I start saying Jesus more and more. It's at the beginning it was harder, because when you say God, you will now be looked at funny, but when you say Jesus, the conversation and people, their attitude and the response to you changes. But with time, and as I got a personal relationship with Jesus, then I say it, and I say, well, if they're not going to accept it, but I know He's my Savior because of Jesus dying on the cross for me. Now I can also have a relationship with the Father through Him.
Well, I remember first meeting you, Sika, when you lived not very far down the street from us in Mill Valley there.
And yes, around the corner.
around the corner. And I was always so impressed with the real living relationship you had with Jesus. And well, after we started our program, Why We Are Christians, I could hardly wait to get Skype going so we could do this. And how much you meant to our little church. And of course, I've said a number of times, we really miss you a lot. Now, you had to have a community of Christians there in Togo. Can you tell us about your early Christian experience? And also, were you baptized? And how did that all happen?
Well, I was baptized as a Catholic growing up, but when I was in the States, I was baptized at a Baptist church in forgot the name in Oakland, Island Temple Church, where I was dunked underwater, and that was a real experience, because I go to church, I'm very shy, I stay in the back, and then I leave. And every time they call people to give their lives to Christ, I felt that I already have Christ, so I don't have to walk up. And but then with just praying and asking that if that's what the Lord want me to do, but every time they call, they make the altar call, I don't go. But that was one time where I didn't know, and it wasn't me, and I just started walking, and I went and I gave my life to Christ, and to get baptized, and that was in East Oakland. That's what I was trying to say. It was in the
I
church.
remember now. I remember that you had a relationship with a church in Oakland. Yes. Okay, Sika. Yes.
So that's where I was baptized.
Right.
Went under and came out a new person.
Let's move to talking a little bit about how you grew up in your Christian life. Did you run into any difficulties? You know, Christians have doubts, and we go through this and that and the other.
Yeah.
Did you have any of that, or did you just sail upwards, or what?
Well, I've been blessed, and I always say that, I didn't come to Christ because of having challenges or where some others have trying to turn their life around. It was a slow progress. I knew him. I know of him. Actually, I knew of him, and then I knew that him and relied on him personally. And I think I would say difficulties of me coming in my life is nothing major, but just not being able to make life decisions, being the fact that you're not with your family, you are far away, and relying on Jesus and praying that He's my Father and He can guide me. And whenever there's a difficulties, going on my knees and praying and asking God for guidance and asking the Holy Spirit. And so that's how I grew uh, to a personal relationship and a stronger Christian in asking for guidance and asking for my faith to be as strong as my mother's faith. And I think from the experience and seeing how prayers is important, and also it, I always believe that I don't want to go before Christ or before Him, or staying on the path that I had set out for me. So I always want to pray and ask, and then for guidance, and waiting on Him. Or I'm doing better on waiting on Him instead of taking the decision and then praying about it.
All right, Sika. Thank you. Thank you for all of that. The Christian life is different for just about everybody, and we go through our ups and our downs and so on, but we keep moving forward. Now, so here you are in Togo. I know you went back to be with your family, and so what are you doing now? Give us a little bit of what's up for you right now. What you're doing, working wise. Are you involved in any ministries and so on?
Well, right now, I'm not involved in any ministry, but when I came back in 2007, with my sister, who's an ordained pastor, at the time she was going to pastoral school, we were involved in, because she heard, the Lord spoke to her to do a Bible school to the children, to gather the children.
Yes.
That was the message. So she will gather, and it started with 3 kids. She gathered them and on Saturdays, and then grew and talking to them about the Bible, about Christ, and then it grew into even helping them with schools. And so that's one thing that I had done before. Actually, now that I'm back, I haven't got involved in it as I did before. But I'm working. I'm working at a bank. I'm a branch manager in the town of Lome, and that is taking a lot of my time. But I do know I do get involved with evangelists, because that's one thing I feel I could do more in spreading the gospel. But since I'm not doing what I wish I could do, have more time to do, or even have the, how would you call it, the zeal to do it. So I try and support all the few people who do evangelism from my church, especially that go do it in villages, because in the villages, I believe that they need to hear more of the good news. And most of the time, the pastors and people who do that in the villages, they're very not, they're also struggling. So it doesn't make it inviting for someone to believe that the Lord or Christ can be their solution. So I try to encourage them and support them financially. So that's what I'm doing right now, to support 3 different evangelists financially, to continue spreading the good news.
I remember that our yard sales, part of it would go to Togo, and some of the
Yes.
work that you were doing, Sika, and uh, so you became a Christian in what year? About
I
you?
would say, I believe in eight, 89,
Okay, I was going to say in the
in
late. I was going to
89.
say someplace in the late '80s. So you've been
Yeah,
Christian.
89.
You've been a Christian a long time, approaching almost 4 decades. And
Yeah.
now, I just thought of a couple background things. I should have put it way at the beginning of this, and in the editing process, we may do that.
Okay.
But the language that you grew up speaking was French. What was your native language? Your language spoke as a kid.
Yeah, as a kid, my mother was a teacher. So she taught us French because she realized the kids that come to school that don't speak French at home have a harder time with the school. So she taught us French as growing up, but most kids, and when we went to school at age 6, we learned one of our native language called Mina. Mina is a dialect of Ewe. Ewe is the actual language of the southern people of Togo that is spoken in Ghana and Togo.
All right. Now I know that Togo was a French colony.
Yes.
French colony. Uh, did Togo? When did they move away from being under France?
Well, Togo is actually, it was a German colony,
Oh,
but Germany did not want to have colonies. So when they were leaving the area, they gave it to France to hold. So they gave it a treaty to for France. So, but it, people, we act like we were colonized by French, but we were put in their charge, Togoland. And in 1960, Togo got independence. But I can tell you it's independence on paper, but it's totally still dependent on France.
so now
So,
do you speak French to this day?
yeah, so French is the official language in Togo.
Okay.
Plus, they have over 50 something dialects and numerous languages.
All
So
right.
there's two main language. The Ewe is the one from the south, and Kabye is the language up from north.
Now, um, did you have much? I know we had contact with a lot of the traditional religions. How about
Yes.
Islam? Was there much of an Islamic influence in that part of Togo?
Not much now when I was growing up, but I can tell now that I'm here, there's a lot more. But Togo is a really, I would say, peaceful country where, the Muslim, in the north of Togo, it's more Muslim. But there's no fanatic Muslim. And the Muslim here, they live in, so whenever there's any governmental or official event, all the religions are represented, where all the way to the priestess and the chiefs and everything. So the Muslim, the Catholics, the Protestant, you know, Assemblée de Dieu is the, I would say, the, how they call it, the Spirit of Holy Spirit Church. So, and where they talk about the Spirit, and they talk in tongues in those churches, whereas the Protestant and Catholic, there's none of that.
Now I know you were visited by a mutual friend just recently, Jean-Claude
Yeah,
Soulet.
yeah,
Yeah, John Claude, who he's French, and he ministers to French-speaking Africans.
yeah,
That's
and
that's his ministry. And he
And
visited
Haiti
us.
too.
He must have, when he visited Miller Avenue, he must have met you then.
Yes, that's where he met me, and the fact that he's been to my country and seeing me in Mill Valley, he wasn't expecting to see a Togolese there because he goes to Benin a lot, which is a neighboring country, but he goes to Togo too. And he was here just 2 weeks ago. He's actually currently in Cameroon. He went to Benin and then he's currently in Cameroon. He came over and I didn't get to go see him preach, but I saw him on I believe Tuesday and then a Sunday where he was in Togo. So it was really nice seeing a connection from Mill Valley in Lome.
Well, he's emailed. We've been emailed. He told me all about he's going to visit you, and then he emailed me and said, I have visited Sika, and we're going to do a Skype with John Claude at some point coming up. We're going to get him. And
good.
Now he's an interesting guy, and what courage he has to go into all of these countries, Northern African, French-speaking places. I guess all former French colonies at one point. Yeah. And that's a strange thing that he would do to have that focus. So now, Sika, are you ever coming back and visit us in Mill Valley? You going to do that?
I would love to. I would love to. I'm trying to finish my house. As you can tell, you see, it's not painted. There's, so there's lots of work. But that's one thing I want to finish the house so my mom can enjoy it, and I'm hoping I was thinking this year, but this year I will go to France and go see my niece and my brothers because this year I'm going to turn 50. So
wow! Yes,
know.
You are. Okay, yeah, you're gonna be 50 on July the 7th. July the 7th, Sika. Yes.
So I'll turn 50. So I want to go celebrate it with my niece, my brothers in France. That's the wish and the prayer. So hopefully, God willing, we'll be able to do that.
Indeed. Well, we'll be presenting this program to people around in different parts of the country over a period of years. And we're going to show it to everybody at Miller Avenue so they can keep up with you. And I got to tell you, we think about you a lot. We talk about you. We talk about those wonderful times we had with you, Sika. Yeah. And thank you so much joining us in our program on why we are Christians. All right.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
God bless.
So long, our dear Sika.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right. So you found why we are Christians, and now into the program, and look forward to more testimonies of why we are Christians.